our biggest revenue drivers are our long tail keywords, and we're getting double of case volume. Google does not use click-through rate as a signal as much in the more competitive spaces.
Can you walk us through the core components of your SOP framework?
The biggest challenge in the future that I see is provenance. I think for Google, the biggest challenge they have today is provenance on opinions, provenance on expertise, provenance on authority. The biggest change that's happened is I've realized everything is my job. And that doesn't mean that I have to do everything. Google doesn't want you to know how their machinery works, and I'm pretty sure I have a pretty good idea of how it works these days.
Welcome back to the Agency Insider Show, where we unpack what actually drives growth for agencies and businesses beyond surface level tactics. I'm your host, Navneet Kaushal. Today's guest is Eean Ovens, co-founder and CEO of Agency Assassins, and he has built something rare in our industry, a platform that actually helps agencies deliver predictable, scalable results in local SEO. Eean, welcome to the Agency Insider Show.
Thank you so much for having me, Navneet. I'm so excited to be on here, and I appreciate, after having seen you speak and seeing all of your knowledge and creativity you bring to that, I feel very honored to be a guest.
Yeah, the same here. I've seen you talking at so many places. Of course, you run such a good popular software, which I'm very much interested to unpack as well. So let's start. So Eean, I have been in SEO, of course, for more than 2 decades. So I know that the best practitioners in our space rarely comes through traditional path. You started in a construction and manufacturing, moved through creative industries and became a CTO. And now you are running one of the most data-rich local SEO platforms. So I want to understand how that journey shaped your thinking.
Yeah, well, so my original start, my parents actually owned a software company before I got into construction. So I had a chance from when I was 18. My very first day of professional work was sat down at a WISE terminal, AS400 system, and told to integrate 2 systems. And
Okay.
I opened the book on the WISE manual for how to run and started to learn how to do systems integration by reading through the book. And so, I think that in terms of formative, in terms of, I think everybody has their own set of challenges and privileges. And one of the big privileges that I have is that my parents sent me there. It was their company. And, they said, well, Eean can do it. And I had no knowledge, but so I showed up as, a child. I was 18. And I was expected to figure it out, and I did, and it was uncomfortable. And I think that was very important because I always had the expectation that I would figure things out around me. People expected me to be able to do that. And so going from there to construction, I became an operations manager for the largest roofing company in Colorado, and that was while I was in my 20s. And then I implemented systems there. And then my first chance to really do something on my own is a printing company that I still own part of, with a really great business partner. And while there, people were coming in asking for websites, and this is after the roofing company. And at the roofing company, I had my first exposure to SEO. Someone came in and he pitched SEO, and he had a report, and the report was from it was the SEO SEO Power Suite, and so the report at the bottom had the name of the software on it. And I ended up hiring him because I was asked to review this guy's SEO contract, but I ended up writing the content because I liked writing. And so this was 2008. So my first SEO project was in 2008, and I was able to understand what he was going for with his SEO optimized content. I wrote the content. The site performed very well. And then in 2011, at the printing company, somebody came in asking for a website. I still had the report from when in 2008, and I went and bought the software, SEO Power Suite, after selling the guy an SEO contract in person, face to face, $1,500 a month. And then I went home and I Googled how to do SEO after selling the contract. So I think you can kind of see being expected to figure it out, sitting down with the book and opening it up and learning. I think that having audacity, just that is like, that has been very formative. So like the willingness to try and without knowing you're going to succeed, I think is like one of the most formative aspects of that.
Wow. And uh, you said you worked in an interstate roofing in operations before moving into digital marketing.
Yes.
Now, most SEOs have never touched operations in a physical business. So, I mean, you are probably the second guy I came across.
Yeah.
And so what did managing real world logistics, maybe like crews, timelines, and all that teach you that most digital marketers completely miss about serving local businesses?
I think it's that like system, like, so system only works when it's paired with process. And so like you can develop like systems and they can be great, but like it's process implementation that makes systems work. And so people will buy review management software and they'll offer it to their customers, but they'll never take the time to figure out what is the breakdown in that business's process that leads them not to utilize it. And the extra work of being responsible for process in terms of what humans actually do and what the systems that support them do is usually where a lot of this stuff breaks down. And so I think you see though, like our industry has become standard operating procedure based very, very heavily. I think that the nature of the rigor needed to do SEO well has crossed over, and a lot of SEO agencies are good at teaching that to clients. Yeah, I think that the biggest thing that I learned, because you can implement, I've done, $1 million implementations of software, and if the leadership isn't on board first, in other words, the first person that has to be an advocate is the person at the top. And if you're missing that person's buy-in, it does not matter. That person has an incredible ability to undermine almost any systems that you put in place. And so the person who you need to sell in terms of it is whoever is at the very, very top. And for anybody who's attempting to like percolate change, and this goes for SEO in terms of, implementing process around content generation, implementing process around sales process for referrals or reviews or whatever, all that stuff. Like you really, like the person who has to be sold is the person who's at the very, very top. And I think, when it comes to local SEO, reviews are such a massive part of the competitive advantage that businesses ought to, at the highest levels, have reviews integrated as a system process. And so these are the things that I think that some people can miss.
Okay. So now how does that operations mindset show up in how you have built agency assassin systems?
Well, I think it's interesting because, I've actually failed there. I failed there pretty well for a while. I created software that's a very useful tool. And I actually did not look at the process problem hard enough for a very long time. I had to really learn how to develop like a great process around it, which I have now. Over the course of running the software, I changed my approach to it. I actually got to where my sales process was an extremely in-depth training call, and that's the software. But that's where my retention, my churn was under 1% when I ran all that myself. Super good for SaaS. And so then when I handed that process off to someone else, my churn exploded. And what I failed to do was recognize the nuance and the insecurity that I created by being really capable myself. And I think this is, what the E-Myth, the E-Myth Revisited. This is like the existential problem of businesses that are in between 7 and 15 employees, is that the owner ends up accumulating a level of knowledge and skill that becomes the primary asset of the business. I did that. I did the same thing. So in doing
Right.
so, it limited my ability to like empower a team. What
Right.
was how vital that is. And so eventually what I did is I built some tools. I built a custom GPT. I built a really simple process. Without AI, it would have been really hard to do. It would have been very costly to build the software that I needed to be as intelligent as I needed.
Okay.
But with AI, I was able to build a tool very easily that essentially the problem that I had to solve was detectability and consistency on my campaigns. If 100 people sign up for the software and they all follow this guide, or if the guide is well structured enough, will 100 of them be successful? And I had to produce something where I had a really high confidence that was going to happen. And I hadn't yet done that because I was unaware of the amount that I had become the primary asset. So eventually developing that then we had to look back at like what our major failures were after that. And this was actually adoption. So we found that people who sign up for the software and don't fully utilize it, meaning they don't use like 5 campaigns to start at least, have a very high rescission rate. So the people and then people who adopt 4 or more accounts, something like 60% of those people are still customers at the end of 12 months. And then after that, they stay customers forever, 60-70%. So I have like a 70% retention if we just get full accounts into the software. And so from there, it was developing a process where I am incentivizing people to use the software fully. And all of those things, like once I got everything in line, then all of a sudden our churn rate dropped significantly and we started growing a lot again. We also had higher satisfaction from our customers. But yeah, so those were it was me not doing what I just preached and then learning how to do that in the sense. Yeah.
Okay. So that is actually interesting. I mean, sometimes the knowledge of the owner actually we think becomes an asset, but that actually tends to be a liability as well, if you see, because we have to carry it and that becomes a little bit tough. So now you also mentioned being part of 10 successful business endeavors. So without naming names, if you prefer, I am curious about the failures or near failures. And what was the venture that taught you the most painful but valuable lesson?
Well, I mean, to be honest, so the printing company, the printing company is one that it drove my success it drove me into the agency. So it was wonderful. And the people who are involved with it are like family to me. But the partnership agreement, our operating agreement had no teeth. And we had 4 business partners and we had an operating agreement with no teeth. And that business was not well managed. So my business partner, who was the CEO, wasn't managing it well, but we didn't have a means through our operating agreement to easily offer oversight and removal, which we needed. And so that business was not run effectively. And this is, I think with partnerships, what I've learned over time, I mean, my strategy now, I have awesome partners on so many different deals, like people who are great, like people just where we like take care of each other and we do really well. And what I found is I look for 2 things nowadays. One of them is someone who is successful and offers freely, meaning they're doing well and then they make offers, and the offers are out of generosity. So it's like, hey, would you like this? Would you like that? Those people I almost always will invest into. The second is people whom I offer freely to. So I give them something of value and they come back to me with something. And in either one of those 2 situations, those are the things that I look for beginning a relationship, a business partnership. And the reason is that I think that if you have to confine someone in order to have them be a mutual, like be a person who's mutually interested in success and is responsible for it, if that needs them to have some sort of confining agreement or contract or something like that, those are not people you want as partners typically. Instead, you want people who are offering to help out of, hey, like, I like you. I'm already doing this thing. Can you use some of this? And you find that those people who are doing that already, like with no expectation back, those are the people who, where if you want to take a risk and you want to like put out, investment, time, whatever, those are the people who typically will turn into good partners in the future as well. And so that lesson, it's sad for me a little bit because that business actually is in bankruptcy, and not because of its fundamentals. It generated $2 million in revenue last year, but it was mismanaged, and so it was a small business. Certainly had no reason to fail except that at an executive level, it was mismanaged, and so I co-founded that business. Well, the business was founded in 2009. I came in as a partner in 2011. So that is 15 years of work, and the fact that it's a failure, even though it had no reason to fail. For both the employees and as an asset, that's something that I feel if I knew then what I know now, I would have created a different operating agreement, and we would have had a way to keep this investment, healthy. Yeah.
Okay. Now you were a CTO at Denver Digital Agency, right? Before.
Yeah. So I am CTO today. I previously was the founder. So I founded the business, and then I stepped away, and it is now mostly run by two business partners. And I still do some R&D for local SEO. Yeah.
Okay. And so being a CTO and a technical guy and moving towards the CEO, and of course a non-technical job. So what was the hardest mindset shift for you, and what do you wish someone has told you earlier?
I think that if you like taking executive responsibility, I think one of the hallmarks is, I would say one of the hallmarks is being limited by your mental capacities, your experience, all these things. I don't know that there's any easy shortcuts, and I think I was looking for shortcuts. I think I spent a lot of effort avoiding things that I felt like I could avoid, like difficult management decisions, or ensuring that employees were operating at a certain level, like things that maybe didn't come naturally to me or were even uncomfortable for me. I spent a lot of time trying to get around them. I spent a lot of years avoiding problems that I felt like weren't my problem. Like having a business partner who was operating as CEO who wasn't performing, and instead of stepping back in as CEO, which is what I should have done, I allowed my agency to shrink over the course of a couple of years. I grew it to around 750,000 in revenue, and then it shrank down to 500,000 over 2 years after I left. I had a mindset that was like, oh, well, that's not my job. And I've had that around a lot of areas of being a leader. It's like, oh, well, I'm not good at that. That's not my job. And I think that as I've become significantly better at being an executive, the biggest change that's happened is I've realized everything is my job. That doesn't mean that I have to do everything. In fact, I should probably make sure somebody else does it. But that it's done well is my job. That everything is done well is my job. If I have a CEO who's a business partner and his operating ability isn't excellent, that's me not succeeding. That's not him not succeeding. I can't point my finger at him. I'm the one who's created these circumstances. I'm the one who placed this person. If he's not succeeding, that means that I've failed. And I think getting to the point where rather than trying to find my way out of certain problems or trying to correct things with other people, choosing that that, okay, this is a lack of skill of my own, and this performance problem is my performance problem, in order for me to find a solution. And that doesn't mean that I have to do everything. Sometimes that's getting better at hiring. You know, a lot of the time that's getting better at hiring. A lot of the time that's better at doing process. Sometimes it's getting rid of products. Sometimes it's adopting new methods, or it could be many different things. And so, but trying to get out of that stuff is the thing that like costs me the most. So I'd say that's probably the thing that I've learned the most, is when you have a weakness or when you have a failure, run towards it, not away.
Okay. Let's talk about the 20 million data point advantage. So, I mean, and it is true, this is such a big data set, which not most of the agencies will have access to. Yeah. And you did 20 million data points from 2,000 plus active campaigns. So of course, this is real-time intelligence, how Google Map actually behaves. I want to understand what patterns you are seeing that other can't. So when you look at across 20 million data points, what's the single most counterintuitive pattern you have discovered? Something that contradicts what most local SEO believes to be true.
So I mean, one thing that people get wrong when they do click-through rate is that CTR, they try to use CTR in order to lead as an indicator, as a signal for rankings, and that's not natural in many cases. So if you're using CTR, if you're using click-through rate software, if you're sending traffic and there's an update and your rankings drop, then you should decrease the amount of clicks you do. And people, that feels bad, because it's like it feels like, oh no, I need more, but it's an unnatural signal. So part of doing click-through rate, part of our SOP, everything is designed, and our software is all designed around setting natural signals. Our software actually, as soon as you're in a declining moving average, our software actually backs off on traffic until it stabilizes. And this is through many years of learning, because in that declining pattern, you don't want to go against it with traffic. But how Google responds to a decrease in traffic on that, as long as the traffic continues, is to increase rankings. And so when you see a drop in rankings, if you're doing click-through rate, what you want to do is actually decrease the amount of traffic that you're sending, and you'll see you'll see traffic increase. Which it makes sense. It's they're just, from the standpoint of what Google anticipates and what natural signals are. Google has a pretty good understanding of what data should look like. And so if your data looks natural, then it works better. And so one of the things is that if your rankings decrease, you should send less traffic. And then as your rankings increase, you send more traffic. That would be a really big one. And then as far as counterintuitive signals, besides that, I think, more traffic isn't better. And the Google does not use click-through rate as a signal as much in the more competitive spaces. You can think about it like this: if Google has 100 extremely well qualified options for a search term, CTR click-through does not have to be as vital, because they already know that they have many good options. They've already qualified these through tests. They've done split testing. They've tested the UX. They know all these businesses answer their phones. They know all these businesses, have like a high degree of success if they send traffic there. They have the choice of many businesses that will produce a high quality result for a customer. And so they don't necessarily have to use CTR. And the reason that they don't necessarily use it is probably because they want to increase the likelihood that you'll spend money on ads. And how do they increase the money that you spend on ads? They make it so that SEO is less responsive on those highest value keywords. So on purpose, they don't want to be quite as responsive in the places where they have the highest revenue generation and they have the least incentive to be super flexible. Now, if you go from there to keywords that are much less popular, they might not have as clear of a solution for that customer. They have less data, they have fewer searches. And so click-through rate actually works significantly better because Google doesn't necessarily have guaranteed 100 great options for that search because those other businesses haven't optimized for it. That search is, out of the ordinary. And so where click-through rate works extremely well is actually with large volume keyword strategies, which is what our SOP is, 160 keywords that we rank for. And we find that our biggest revenue drivers are our long tail keywords, where it might be a keyword that's not expected to be like a high revenue generator. An example is law firm for car accident. We have a client through my agency that's paying $15,000 a month, and in March they're supposed to go up to $25,000 a month. Large law firm, and law firm for car accident is where we took them from 30 to 2 across the entire metro, and we're that's one of the keywords, and we're getting double of case volume. But if you look at Denver personal injury attorney, our performances are this particular business's average rank is around 9. It's not generating large lead flow. So we've doubled their case volume on keywords that are lower confidence in terms of like for Google that like less popular, less competitive. Yeah.
Okay. So it's like the lower the volume of the keyword, there are not many competitors also vying for it, I'm sure.
Yeah, and some of those can drive huge amounts of revenue. But the problem is that it's also super costly to optimize for all of those. So CTR has a huge advantage there because you can optimize for them with a couple clicks a month and actually rank for them. And you could spread that over 100 keywords, and all of a sudden you've got a strategy. That would be very difficult to do manually or with website strategies or content strategies, which are all fantastically effective today in terms of building authority rather than, just doing keyword optimizations. The good strategies are there right now, but it's hard to do that for 100 weird keywords. So click-through rate has a huge advantage there in being able to target those 100 weird keywords all at once.
So when you choose 160 keywords, it's like you're sending 2 clicks per keyword?
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. So how we cluster it out is by 3 groups: branded, and then money or primary traffic, and then long tail. And so it's usually about 15 to 20 branded keywords. Branded searches have no economic value for Google. They're not really filtered. They don't really look at it. It's not costing them money to rank you for that. And it indicates brand interest. And so there's some other stuff that it does as well. Google looks at normalized traffic. They look at normalization curves. Basically, most of your traffic should be coming into your business at rank 1, 2, or 3, because that's where most traffic clicks.
Right.
Whatever. And so if all of your clicks are coming from terms that rank in the teens, then Google knows. So you send branded traffic because they all rank high. So then the other ones are your most competitive keywords, which are your many keywords. These are going to be the ones that rank the worst and that have the most competitors. They're going to also be the ones that Google is most sensitive about in terms of traffic. So then there's long tail. And so basically the way that we do it by default is we're sending 3 clicks a day. Our default setting is 3 clicks a day on brand, 2 clicks a day on your most competitive keywords, of which there are about 10 or 15. So those are getting a click about once a week. And then long tail is about 100 keywords, and those are getting 2 clicks a day. So those are each keyword is getting clicked about once every 50 days. And so essentially what you're doing is you're creating noise and you're creating activity and then some signal. But most of it is de-risking and doing something that's very general. But like that strategy is like, as far as I've seen, 100% effective. It's either positive or it's neutral. And if it's neutral, it'll become positive eventually. It's because as Google accumulates traffic over time, the historical traffic is a huge benefit. Yeah.
So now there are so many CTR softwares in there. There are offline CTR software. You can buy them. So what differentiates agency assassin with another software?
I mean, like a lot of it just has to do with our systems are very sophisticated. It's most of these platforms haven't had to deal with thousands of simultaneous campaigns all staying effective over years. We've been going since 2019. So I mean, in general, ours is the easiest to operate. I would say most newer software has to get a bigger effect than ours in order to like make an entry into the marketplace. And so people are trying to do things that are riskier strategies in general, so they can have that impact. And that naturally means that they're somewhat riskier. Ours is not designed for that. Ours is designed to be institutional. If you use our software, it will have a significant ROI, but where it shines is it's a passive critical signal, but it's one that generally speaking, the way that you leverage it is by turning it on and then continuing to do SEO as you normally do, and it enhances everything else that you do. What you find is your campaigns, especially they instantiate like new campaigns on new listings become kind of stable much faster than new campaigns typically. And then for like our largest clients, which are 350 plus location, very large agencies, what they've done is implemented this like, as part of their SOP. And what they know is that they get higher KPIs, they get more leads, they have better retention, the clients are happier over time. And so you can build around this with your other SEO methods without having to worry about whether or not this is going to be working next week, or whether or not some setting's going to go wrong, or whether or not the software's not going to be running, or server's going to be down. We have way better than 99% uptime. And, we use all mobile data, and we've just been doing this a very long time. So I would say I do not intend to be the strongest signal out there of any click-through product. I intend to be the most reliable and the most consistent, and something that you can plan around in terms of your process and get a very consistent benefit. And I don't think that anybody else has had that approach. And also part of it is the privilege of being the longest in the marketplace.
Okay. Now, so what happens when how do you distinguish, let's say if there is a Google algorithm change versus something else when the thing starts going south?
Yeah. Well, so our system already like manages through so if there's a change in moving averages, we automatically begin to decrease the amount of traffic we're sending, because if a moving average is dropping, that is a high risk environment for us to send lots of traffic. Our software manages that super, super well. The last few major updates, our software has performed incredibly well. There was 2024, there are two big ones. There's September and March. And in both circumstances, we crushed it. Partially because, the software automatically starts to decrease the traffic as it drops. So the March update was really bad for some people, 2024. And what we found is within about 2 weeks, almost all of our accounts had recovered because they were still getting clicks. So some people in that update did not recover because they weren't getting any natural CTR, and they stayed gone. And that did not happen to anybody who's on our platform because they were still getting traffic. So they might have seen a 5-7 position drop during that update, and then they automatically, as the traffic started to come in, regain their rankings. We find on most updates on maps, our software dramatically improves the recovery rate for listings. As far as other tests, I'll be honest, I don't know that it's not. It is a lot of work. We know tests that are happening probably before anybody else does, because again, we're running 200,000 events a day. We're managing 2,000 campaigns, so we start to see failure rates spike, or we start to see some view change. We start to see split tests. We see new device artifact or new artifacts like objects and screens that before anybody else, because we're doing this on 2,000 listings at once. And generally probably within about 8 hours of Google releasing a new A/B test, we're probably aware of it. And On the very slow side, I would say we have updates out before you would see it posted about on Facebook most of the time.
Okay.
And we're not announcing some of that stuff because it's part of our competitive advantage. So for other people, you can go into some of the groups and see people complaining about something, and we'd already fixed it a few weeks ago. That does happen, but for us, we're not necessarily wanting to let our competitors know what we found, because it's one of our big competitive advantages. So yeah.
Okay. So that is interesting. And now you also mentioned you were a SOP framework and obsession with building systems rather than just running campaigns. So SOPs are something which you love, which you talked about. Now my question is that I've been doing a scaled an agency for over 2 decades. I know a difference between agencies that have real system versus agencies that have chaos with good intentions.
Right.
So let's break down what you have built now. So where did your obsession with systems comes from?
I think that I have always been interested in those types of puzzles. Like it's fun taking things apart. There's a bunch of systems that Google has in terms of detection and stuff that I discovered before anybody else did. I've tested and implemented theories a few times and been pretty far ahead of the curve of knowing what Google was going to do in updates down the road. And that I think is something that I really, really enjoy, is the kind of the problem of that. I think that systems are problems. It's kind of caters to my strengths.
Okay.
I wouldn't say that's, but like kind of like what I was talking about before when I was missing the procedures, it's also a weakness, because I'll try to solve a problem through systems that should be solved through communication. And I've had that problem with my software where I try to fix the system instead of just talking to my customers. Yeah, I think discovering I have the presentation explaining that the helpful content penalty is specifically meant to punish page spam, because page spam is incredibly effective at treating knowledge graph. So specifically, helpful content penalty protects knowledge graph from page spam. That is the purpose of it. And I have a thesis that I shared about that. I think I was the first person to do that. I like that. That's fun. It's fun looking at like my old experiments and tests. It's fun going through them. It's fun when the data reveals something that other people don't know. I do enjoy those things. I would say that partially just the having an actual curiosity and interest that drives me that way to figure these things out. And it is entertaining, and there's a certain gratification that comes from figuring out something that's purposefully obfuscated. Google doesn't want you to know how their machinery works, and I'm pretty sure I have a pretty good idea of how it works these days.
Okay. Now, for agencies listening who wants to build more systematic operations, can you walk us through the core components of your SOP framework, and what are the non-negotiable elements that every process-driven agency needs to have in place?
Yeah, so this is funny. This is like probably something that you've done well for a while, and a lot of really I think that people have really approached this problem, and this is like the opposite of my area. So I might go to hack some metric and figure out how to make that metric turn around and get a result. And that is not necessarily the right way to do SEO these days. In fact, I would say even working with my software, it's not the best way to do it. I would say that what's most important, so understanding how knowledge graph works, understanding it is foundationally is helpful. Or even if you don't understand how knowledge graph works, understanding that having a business that's authoritative and shows expertise, and how to express that in content, and how to syndicate that into a network, and how to find ways to interact with other people who are creating that kind of content, you did that awesome analysis on AI fan out queries and stuff like that. That was such a great way of like pinpointing, like, this is where you need to be. This is where you need to have a voice. Understand, like right now, I think what's critical is building systems that allow you to speak for a business as loudly and authoritatively as you can under their own voice, because the biggest challenge in the future that I see is providence. Which when I say providence, like, with antiques or with like collectibles, providence is proving something's real, proving that it has like a history. I think for Google, the biggest challenge they have today is providence on opinions, providence on expertise, providence on authority. And who is this person that has this idea or this opinion? I was talking to somebody recently who shows a huge benefit in the authoritativeness of your articles if you put your personal socials for the business owner under their authorship and you connect their profiles to it, which makes tons of sense from that same standpoint. If you look at why Reddit became extremely authoritative, Reddit is proof of providence. There's a message history and posting history of every user who's commenting on a thread. You can establish that these people existed. They were around. They were talking about something. Maybe they're talking about it in 2013. If you need to establish that this is authentic, that this isn't fabricated, Reddit is a great way to do that, because the whole history plus the moderation, the self-moderation, upvoting and downvoting, is this massive filter on all these opinions and links and stuff that Google could just leverage and get, maybe $1 trillion of the man hours of filtering out of a platform that they could just leverage into known signals. I think for people who are looking to do SEO, having some understanding that that's the problem that Google has today, interfacing with that problem in such a way as to create authority. My software works best by far in competitive spaces with businesses that have established authority. I did a test recently with a friend for a law firm that has many locations in Florida. They do personal injury. They gained something like 30 positions on Tampa personal injury attorney overnight. Why? Because the business has been around for 30 years. They've been in the news. They have multiple locations. They're all over the place. They've done all the community stuff, sponsoring little league teams and stuff like that in other cities. They have an extremely long established record. As soon as they start getting some traffic, they go up for $1 million terms overnight. The reason that happened is Google has a reason to qualify that. The reason is that they have a history, they have providence of something that's gone on for a really long time. Traffic became a validator at that point. It's not primarily a signal in this situation. It's primarily a validator for all the other signals that already exist. Right. This is the challenge that people are having right now, is how do you create signal and how do you validate it? And so I think looking at SEO as, hey, I need to create as much known authority and expertise in the areas that matter and distribute it in as many places as are important as I possibly can. And I need to do it as economically as possible. I mean, this is where, AI agents or, using OpenClaw or something like that, and finding ways to offset the human cost of these challenges and systematize it and consistently deliver. I think that's the problem of SEO today. I think that's the existential challenge of SEO today. That and solving that is of the most value, if that makes sense.
Right now, so let's talk process versus talent dependencies. So here's a tension I've observed in agencies. The best practitioners often resist systemization because they believe in their own that their intuition is superpower. So how do you balance having documented system while still allowing for the pattern recognition and the intuition that great SEO brings?
So who's awesome at this is Joy Hawkins. Joy Hawkins. Right. How she does it. And this is I just interviewed her like I interviewed you for my course. Okay. And how she does it is every single action within her organization is clocked as an experiment. So anytime that they go and do a big project for a customer, that is clocked as an experiment, meaning they know the before criteria and then they know the after, the results. And they have a review. They have a review that automatically takes place. So if they're going to spend a whole bunch of time re-optimizing a listing and or doing a new website or whatever it is, and they use some founding principles with how they approach that project, they go back and they look at that project and make sure that it matches what their expectations are. And anytime that it doesn't, it elevates up the chain. It goes to joy. So I think intuition is really, really important. I think, with my agency, I had the same challenge. We had a head of SEO, and he was trying all these different things. And we ended up buying him out because we weren't getting results, and I don't think he was happy in the role. But what we found was we didn't have a way of determining which actions we took were successful. I think anything that you do if you look at SEO, and I think a lot of people are lost right now doing anything that they can. They're like, I don't know if I should do this or I should do that or whatever else. If you slow down enough and you become deliberate enough to check what happens on everything you do, or anything that you do that has a lot of investment or time involved in it. So if you go and build out a big page where you invest content into it and you tell the customer that this is going to work really well, and you document how you did it, and then you make sure that then you check up on the results in a couple of weeks. If you're doing that consistently across your organization, if you're tracking those as experiments, like we track with my agency, any time that we do like a change of procedure, we log that into an Asana sheet, an Asana chart that is for active experiments, and we disposition all those experiments. So I think it can be really scary to hold your own feet to the fire and guarantee that what you think is true. And a lot of people are really lazy about this. And there are tons of agencies out there where there are speakers out there, there are experts who are talking at conferences who do not do this, whose experiments are 6 years old, whose methods do not work. People who are paid to speak on stage, and what they say is absolute crap. It's crap.
Right.
What they're saying is wrong. It's your job to be responsible for the outcomes, which means you have to be looking at what happens. And if you can't measure what you've done, then your intuition doesn't count. Intuition is valuable for thesis. It's not valuable for running a business on. If you develop a thesis, test it. If your thesis doesn't pan out, and like maybe it's your experimental methods, maybe it's something else, but you should be considering yourself an experimenter, a scientist, a person who's willing to look at the objective results and evaluate those over time.
Okay. Now, scaling without breaking. So you have achieved 50% annual growth, and most agencies break between 5 and 15 people because their system can't scale. So what specific system or process was most critical to your ability to grow without any quality collapse?
So our agency right now is so my agency finally pushed over just $1 million revenue, and it's so we have a really great CEO. He's very operation centric, and then he and I collaborated a bunch on this experimental stuff. I would say he was really good at developing. He developed with the Asana process that's very easy to replicate and track. And so he developed a very easy to deploy system. And then he and I worked together to add feedback into the system. So basically to where the staff, for a while, is very mechanistic. And it was still working better than we had worked before because we had a process that had tracked everything. Everything was at least had an existence. If the client paid for something, we would know whether or not that was happening. But then what we had to bring to that was more observation and then iteration. And then as soon as we did that, we started getting really good results, and the company started to grow quite a bit. So I think that it's a combination of people like systems that work, but also like human autonomy, like a little bit of like someone to observe like results. This kind of goes back to the joy thing, checking to see how things work, taking critique, improving systems over time, and having that be part of your average business process is how we've done it. Is having an SOP, but having that SOP change over time pretty actively. That's been something that's really improved our performance. Yeah.
Okay, now let's talk about the custom GPT architecture. So you build some custom GPTs for your operation. So what exact problems does it solve, and what data does it access, and how do your team member actually interacts with it daily?
It's not our team, it's actually the agencies. So basically it
Okay.
takes all the guesswork out of configuring a campaign. So for a customer to know how to distribute some keywords. So basically what it does is we just take from the performance data on the GBP, Google shows you all of the places that this listing has showed up. If we take all of that data, we can drop it into the GPT, and it'll basically take that and it just categorizes the keywords. The categories are branded, money, primary keywords, and then long tail keywords. And then from there, it just goes into the software with configuration that we recommend. What it solves is these problems that I had. I put everything that I needed for those categories to have, everything that I needed into this GPT so that I don't have to.
Okay.
So it's not technically difficult. It's not slow or time consuming. It's super, super fast. So it solves all of the consideration on how these things should be configured, and it's super, super consistent. So what it solved for me is having to explain something that maybe some people are interested in. Maybe some people like have an intellectual interest in why I do it this way. Most people don't care. Most people just want the software to work. So what I did is solved, here's the software working, and you don't have to be an expert. Just drop in your keywords. It'll give you what you need, put in the settings, and the software will run. And it's pretty close to 100% at this point. So that's what it solved.
Is this software available for our agencies or the clients who are subscribing to your software?
Yeah, I mean, like the keyword, if people want the keyword helper, I can give it to them. The GPT, I don't care, but generally it's designed to use my software.
Okay. So we will link it in our show notes for our audience as well.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
Would be fun. Now, let's talk about AI limitations in local SEO. Now, so where have you tried to apply AI and found that it generally doesn't work well, or is AI something which is not you are able to do it in local SEO or not?
So, I mean, so far we've gotten really lucky. Local SEO has dodged a lot of bullets with AI.
Right. Agree.
And I think that primarily there's a lot of reasons why. I think that people still like to have options, and they like to know what's near them. I think this is like maybe even an animalistic thing, like as an animal wanting to look at your surroundings. I think that there's a specific type of action that a person's taking when they're looking for something near them, and I think that Maps has been able to because if you look at Google's testing process with AI, they're testing all the time. They're testing lots and lots of things, and they've eliminated huge swaths of websites that offer information for people because AI does it easier than going to a website and getting something that's not quite exactly what they asked for, but can answer their question. Well, now you can ask AI and it'll answer the exact question you ask. That is significantly better user experience than trying to piece together 10 different pieces of information and get an answer. Well, if you want to see what's out there around you, a map with where those things are is still converting better than their AI options. Otherwise, I'm sure Maps would be gone. If Google had figured out a better way to solve that problem than showing people that, they would have done it already. They might do it in the future. I'm not saying it's beyond expectation. What you're seeing these days, though, are that I think the place to build a lot is to be building for specific use cases, especially the ones that businesses are hands down the best for. Okay. If you have a restaurant that offers a very specific type of food in a specific neighborhood, and it's very, very niche, doing content targeted towards AI engines. There's the listicles thing, which is maybe Google's coming after right now, but creating very specific, and you can do this probably with social media as well, a very specific, hey, if you're looking for this kind of thing, you should go to this restaurant at this place. We have this one thing that's awesome. To where if you run a search query on Google, you're likely to show up at the top for this very specific thing. Well, that's going to get picked up by an LLM. That's going to get into one of those searches really, really easily. Those types of finding your highest value use cases and going after them and producing some sort of content that is going after those highest value things and working on those and developing those over time so that you have some inventory of content or solutions that are specific to really high value things that you offer better than anybody else. I think that makes sense, because if things do change, that's where it's going to go. Then it's going to go to, Google's going to give exactly the exact right thing that this person wants, based upon, they've got hypertension and they can't eat high sodium and they're looking for a restaurant that, Google AI doesn't want to kill them. So it's saying it knows the sodium content of their meals and it's going to send you to the place that has less sodium. That is probably going to happen eventually. So having that content be available as a competitive advantage, I think eventually is going to be really important. I think planning on that's going to be part of the future of this stuff is important. But for right now, maps are still working pretty well and still producing massive revenue. And it also drives a ton of AI results. So I don't think that's going away right away, but eventually, I think, yeah.
Yeah. So because now the thing is, a lot of people are going to ChatGPTs asking questions which they should not be. Okay, for example, which is the best dentist near me, which is open right now. So we know the fundamentals. This is still that the primary architecture of all this data is still Google Maps. It's not that they are producing, and of course there are a lot of things. So is there something you think businesses or agencies needs to start doing differently so that their clients can be recommended more in these LLMs?
Yeah. I mean, I think that what I was talking about before, which is identifying your what are you hands down the best at in an area, in a neighborhood, of a service value, of a unique offering, unique value propositions, differences in products, differences in, the business, woman owned, this thing, that thing. I think that your job is really to make sure those things are well cased and supported, so that a person who's discerning, that there's some authority suggesting that this is an answer. In other words, find whatever the top 10 reasons are someone's going to come to this business, and find ways to be publishing about that, publish about it, publish the ways that that's the case, the specific reasons that's the case. I do think that should be part of your strategy as you move forward, is highlighting those things down to a level of granularity that an AI can read. Yeah.
Okay, so that is interesting. So is there a different methodology one should use for different LLMs, or it's same across all?
The way that I'm seeing LLMs break down is generally, and I'm not, I'll be honest, you have spent more time working on this than me, but it does seem like fan out queries and some degree of caching, some degree of building internal knowledge graphs based upon previous queries is happening across pretty broadly. So everybody's building knowledge graphs. In other words, when ChatGPT runs a search and they find a business, they're building some knowledge graph that has entity related information of whatever it is that they find there. And they're leveraging that to speed up their fan out queries. Essentially, they're building some base knowledge structure that just helps them to avoid having to do high volumes of queries in the future, so they already know something about them. But everybody's using search engines still. The thing about a search engine is that it's a huge database. LLMs are never going to be able to store all that information. LLMs are always going to have to access a database, and LLMs are always going to have to, perform some sort of a query, because the model itself won't be up to date enough. So you're just looking to, to me, what the meta is right now is you just want to have the existence of information that says what you want to be heard about, that's in the places that those LLMs are looking. And so people are using parasite SEO. People are using blogs. They're using listicles. They're using on-site listicles, which may or may not work. They're just finding ways to talk about, here's what we are and why why we are the best in this neighborhood. I don't know that there's a solution besides have a process around making sure that you're publishing that information.
Okay. Now, let's zoom out and talk about in our last session where this industry is heading and address some of the harder questions that always don't get asked. So my first question is around search everywhere optimization. So we know that SEO isn't just Google ranking anymore. It's search optimization, search everywhere optimization. So can you unpack this for me? What platform and behavior should agencies be optimizing for beyond traditional Google search?
I guess to me, what usually where I find opportunities that people maybe aren't as aware of is, emerging media. You look at like TikTok and reel formats, and they're like, there are, especially in like Latin America, in other economies, people doing incredibly well with those mediums, using like other methods of creating interaction with clients, using those to build trust and product knowledge. I think SEO in general, to me, this is like my personal philosophy on it. SEO has been a space for technology adopters. In other words, without becoming too attached to SEO, how people got into SEO, especially if you were in early, was recognizing changes in technology and like recognizing changes in behavior. I think if you look to the same direction, which would be how are people's behaviors changing over time, kind of a anthropological marketing sort of thing. What is happening with humans, and where are humans likely to go? How are humans interfacing with technology differently? I think that you find a lot of those answers. And if you look at, emerging trends, obviously, AI and that sort of thing, future adoption, OpenClaw, if you look at like OpenClaw,
right?
What OpenClaw is doing is it's enabling AI discretion, I think, is a big thing. So in other words, is you start to give an AI agent access to more different information. You start to offload discretion, which is, of course, going back to the maps thing and the thing that you're talking about, meaning AI itself might identify a brand value that it's going to assume is most important for you as a user. It might, again, the sodium thing. It might be like, oh, well, I saw that you had hypertension, so I'm going to send you to Mad Green's restaurant for salad versus, In-N-Out for a burger. I think, when you start to look at this, at this future, it becomes, there's one thing, which is technology adoption. I think probably a trait that's going to be really highly successful in the future is the flexibility to adopt new methods, meaning SEO might not be what exists in a few years.
Right.
We don't have any real clue. I think the willingness to let that go and to look at the next thing, younger people have the benefit of coming newly into this world and looking at it all and seeing what's there for them. And it's nothing like what we see. It's completely different. So, if you see how younger people are adopting technology and utilizing it, you could probably expect to see more trends in that direction. And how do younger people adopt technology? Well, to be honest, younger people are more willing to accept what it offers. They are less they are more likely to see a video on TikTok of a product and just buy it than someone who's, maybe a bit older. And that might change over time as they get scammed, like everybody does. I think that the most important thing is just to be willing to explore what is new, what is out there, how are people behaving that I'm not aware of. Because, for me, I'm a elder millennial. My way of dealing with technology is so different from younger people. And really, for me to want to see what's next, I need to be looking for how do other people use that technology. So I think that there's a piece that's risky and scary, which is being willing to look into environments that we're unfamiliar with and to get to know them, Threads and, Blue Sky, in addition to, X or TikTok, and, looking out for how are things interacting and how are things changing over time? What do these trends look like? Yeah.
And now, so how are you adopting Agency Assassin's product roadmap based on this philosophy?
We have we have worked on some stuff to where we can interact with different systems as different types of users. Eventually, we will be. We're fairly close to being able to actually interact with LLMs to where we would help them build knowledge graphs through user interaction. That is definitely the direction that we'll be going in. Is we'll be sending users to more sophisticated platforms and interacting with agents as people. So.
Okay. So with this, we come to our last section, which is rapid fire. So short answers, first instinct. Are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. Best book you have read in the last year?
Best book I've read in the last year. Oh man, making me go fast. I have to actually check my Audible. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay, Audible. Yes, I have. Actually, my favorite is Beyond Happiness by a guy named Ezra Baidu.
Okay.
And it's The Zen Art of Contentment. Yeah, I've probably read it 10 times, but it is an excellent book.
Okay. And one tool besides Agency Assassin that every local SEO agency needs?
I mean, honestly, probably, besides Ahrefs,
For local SEO.
For local SEO, well, I mean, SEO Neo is excellent. SEO Neo is excellent.
Okay. And biggest waste of money you see agencies spending
on? Biggest waste of money I see agencies spending on staff that isn't using AI.
Okay. And remote team or hybrid or in office, what's your belief?
Hybrid, yeah.
Okay. And one hire that changed everything for your company?
Hire? Is that what you said?
One hire. So anybody you hired will change a lot of things in your company.
My product owner, Alona, we used a headhunter. She's in Poland. She is incredible. I've never had someone be as willing to take on a whole business as her. She's fantastic.
Wow. The SEO tactic that's most overhyped right now?
I think in general, AI optimization. I think a lot of it is smoke and mirrors. I think the reality is it's just authoritative links and good content.
Okay. And my last question, if you had to start over tomorrow with $10,000 and no existing reputation, what would you do?
Right now, it's a good question. I would probably be focused on being an influencer. I think in the future, identity is so important that primarily being an influencer is something that holds future value. In a world where more and more is synthetic, having an identity that's well known, I think becomes more valuable.
Okay. All right, Ian, this has been, of course, a genuinely substantial, honest conversation, and you've given a lot of nuggets, and of course the data drive insights specifically. It's been very, very nice, and thank you for your honesty and sharing so generously. And once again, thank you for your time.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. If anybody wants to reach out, feel free to email me, Eean@agencysauce.com. Happy to answer any questions.
Okay. And for everyone listening, if you got value from this episode, share it with another agency owner who needs to hear it. Subscribe wherever you are listening, and I'll see you on the next episode of the Agency Insider Show. Until then, keep building, keep testing, and keep questioning the conventional wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you.